a picture of, based upon what the servant of the Lord has accomplished in Psalm 22, and how the Lord is promised, the Jehovah, to be the shepherd of His people, then how is it that God's people will be able to approach Him? Psalm 24 is answering that. You notice where it begins. A psalm of David. The earth is the Lord's and all its fullness, the world and those who dwell therein. For He has founded it upon the seas and established it upon the waters. Now, at this point here, we only have there are snippets being quoted in the Old Testament. You might think, well, then why would this, the New Testament, but then why would David, as he writes this, if he's actually going to be talking about redemption and going to be talking about the greater David, Christ, why does he then go back to creation? I mean, what is that here? Doesn't that seem kind of retrograde? The earth is the Lord's and all its fullness, the world and those who dwell therein. Well, you have to understand that this is foundational for redemption. Because if verses 1 and 2 are not true, then neither are anything that comes after it. Nothing that comes after it about who may ascend into the hill of the Lord, and who may stand in His holy place, or lift up your heads, O ye gates, and be lifted up, ye everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in. Who is the King of glory? You see, it's very telling in our own generation that the great attacks upon the Bible and upon Christianity are focused upon creation and also the doctrine of man. If you understand then that the attacks of the evolutionists, the attacks of the sodomites, the attacks of the feminists, and all these various heresies, they're attacking creation, that this entire universe didn't just crawl out of a slime, didn't come from nothing, did not come with the big bang. Instead, that it was spoken into existence, and that it belongs to the Creator, that it is a distinct creation, and that He has created human beings, man and woman, in His image, and has made them for one another. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and cling to his wife. At all of these points where those who are opposed to the Bible attack, if they can undermine that, then they can undermine either that there's any need for a transcendent ethical standard that has been given to us from on high, the Ten Commandments, or for that matter, then they can undermine the doctrine of original sin. We're really okay so far as we go. We may make mistakes, but we're not really sinners in need of redemption. And then they can undermine the New Testament as well, because, well, what do you need a plan of salvation for if we're all just, matter in motion? So you find that it's very important that what David here has to say about salvation, and then I'll go ahead and let the cat out of the bag, but is also a picture of the ascension of Christ. It's very important that he lay the foundation that all these things and the redemption of creation is based upon the fact that this creation is a special creation of God, that the Lord owns everything, that it belongs to Him. Everything that ever exists, because God willed it into existence. John 1 through 3 actually predates what it narrates, Genesis 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And nothing was made which was not made except through Him. We find there right then that in the very beginning was God and the Son, the Father and the Son. And of course we also remember from the Genesis narrative that it was that God was there in the beginning. It was God, and the earth was formless and void, and the Spirit of God hovered upon the face of the waters. So we find Jehovah, we find the Father and the Spirit, and then God spoke the Word, the incarnate, or the Word in its pre-incarnate form. He spoke the Word, and that Word, as the agent of creation, brought about the creation. So Word, Spirit, and the Father, right there in the very beginning. Anything exists, it only exists because God has willed it into existence. Now you might say to me, well, how did God do that? How do words create anything? Well, notice this. Anything that you and I do, anything that you and I build, any task that you and I perform begins with an idea. When your mom says to you, go clean up your room's looking like a pigsty. And of course we know that many children's rooms begin to look like pigsties. Good heavens, even many adults. I lived with one man who was a PK that I kind of wondered if he wasn't part animal, given the way he lived. And you know, when you give that command, what is that command based on? What is it? It's words. And if your children are obedient children, and they obey the first time, then they respond to words. Now, if they're disobedient children, they might have to respond to rod and the pain. They may need some other sort of stimuli. But you understand what words can accomplish. The same thing that you and I put our hands to. And you ask, well, how does that ever come about? How do words accomplish actions in, quote, the real world? Well, see, right there, that sort of gives the lie to the way that we think. Immaterial is just as real as the material. Words accomplish things. Of course, Richard Weaver is known for that great quote, maybe it's almost become a cliche, ideas have consequences. And you might say, well, that still doesn't show me the mechanism by which God brought this creation into existence. Well, you know what? Job was asking more or less the same sort of question when he wanted to accuse God of moral misgovernment of the universe. And remember how God responded to Job in Job 38. He responded to Job out of the whirlwind, out of his power. And he said, well, where were you when I laid the foundations of the universe? Where were you when I brought this creation to existence? Where were you when Leviathan, that great sea creature, was made? Where were you, Job? You see, God doesn't need to tell us the mechanism by which He accomplishes things for the reality that He has spoken this world into existence to be true. Part of what we're finding here in the very opening verses of Psalm 24 is not only a ringing affirmation that this is a created universe, but it is also showing that the rights of the Creator over the creation are absolute. Let me say that again. The rights of the Creator over the creation are absolute. Our culture continually tries to redefine what it is to be human. Matter of fact, that's the existentialist project. It is in root, it is the humanist project to be one's own God and to define for oneself right and wrong, to be the measure of all things, to be the measure of the reality. It has been the project of the serpent since the very beginning. Rather than to receive this world and our roles in it and who we are as God created us to be, we're always wanting to somehow kick God out of the throne, to dethrone God, and instead substitute ourselves. And instead, you have the clamoring of millions of little gods claiming to define men and women for themselves, to define their gender roles, to define right and wrong. And of course, it is always in a topsy-turvy sort of fashion. You think about this, two of the great buzzwords of our time are tolerance, diversity, and let's throw a third one in there, equality. I mean, this really, it harkens back to the French Revolution, but it's not as if that liberty, fraternity, and equality was anything new. These are ancient concepts. And then they're, without definition, are forced down upon all aspects of human life. Equality of what? I mean, fill in the blank. They never do that for you. Equality of what? Equality of the sexes? In what way? There's no two people that are exactly alike. They all have different distinctives, different gifts, different talents, and different characteristics. They may come out with two arms and two legs, but that doesn't mean they're exactly equal in their abilities. So you always have to ask, equality of what? You see, this is the ideologue at work that's trying to level all of God's creation and redefine it for himself. And that means the abolition of gender. the abolition of gender roles, and the abolition for this matter, of property, and the attempting to abolish various talents. I mean, what is socialism and its bigger brother communism based upon? It's all based upon envy and saying that, well, if everyone should have just the same amount of stuff regardless of how much they work for, regardless of their talents, and any slouch. And of course we know what happens with that.